What's up? In today's video, I want to show you how I think about objection handling, how I approach objections, and how I went from literally closing at something like 5% when I first started sales to now closing consistently at 30 to 40% month after month, right? And when you have a closing rate that consistent, it's pretty comforting to know that, okay, for every 10 calls I get, I'm going to close at least three or four. So this is how I view objection handling. I'm not going to cover any of the specific rebuttals or approaches or specific things I say in this video. I want to go over the fundamentals behind objection handling because I truly believe if you can understand the fundamentals behind it, if you can understand how to actually see objection handling, it makes crafting the things to say a lot easier because you can actually understand the thinking behind it and what actually works in 2024 when it comes to objections. So let's get into this. First of all, I wanted to just sort of uncover like what actually are objections, because if you don't know what an objection is, then it's pretty hard to try and counter it, right? And to try and get them to make an action in your favor, right? So an objection is simply a limiting belief. Like that's why basically every sales framework, even if they don't explicitly say that the whole discovery phase is based on breaking down each belief or installing new beliefs in the prospect that they have to have in order to buy, like even if they don't explicitly say that, that's what every good sales framework that actually works will do, right? It's basically addressing certain things and questioning prospects in a certain way where it lines up all of the beliefs that they have to have in order to buy, right? And the goal by doing this, when you ask questions in a way that address each of these beliefs that they have to buy, right? What that does is it eliminates objections before the close, right? You can do everything right. You can do all of the discovery right. You can put the prospect in pain. You can address their financial situation. You can give them urgency to act now and still got to get objections just because of what they are, right? Just because if you haven't broken down the beliefs correctly, or even if you have, like they can still come up, right? So what are these limiting beliefs that often come up? It's like belief structures. So prospects will have beliefs where it's like, okay, if it's over 5K, I can't afford it as an example. Or if I use credit to pay for this, like it's financially irresponsible. So they have these like inbuilt beliefs that kind of like they attribute this meaning to it. It's like if this is the case, then it means X, right? So our goal really with objection handling is to challenge these beliefs that they have and break down the actual meaning behind them, right? So if they say, let's say, using credit is financially irresponsible, I can't use credit because it's going to make me financially irresponsible, whatever. You can sort of reframe that in a way that doing nothing and staying in their current financial situation is irresponsible, right? That's the realization that you want them to be able to achieve, right? And to get them to come to this conclusion that doing nothing and staying in their current financial situation is even more irresponsible. Like we're not using external sales tactics and pressure here. It's really done from asking questions, reframing and asking questions in a way that allows them to realize that this is ultimately the case. That's why like external sales pressure, yes, there's a time and a place for it, but getting the prospect to a position where they're realizing these things for themselves and acting out of intrinsic motivators is basically where the best objection handling is done, right? So this is done through reframing and asking questions, right? So there's four main reasons that we get objections, and I'm just going to unhighlight them here now and then just go through them one by one. So number one is logistics. So genuinely this is the case sometimes. So they need to like move money around. They genuinely need to speak to their partner about it, which obviously you can address in the discovery phase as well as the financial things, but sometimes it doesn't come up. Timing. So let's say they have like a huge project that they need to finish, and like even if they wanted to give your solution time, they couldn't at the moment. Maybe you had a breakdown in the sales process. So maybe there was something that you did where you missed a key part that you really should have addressed, because you thought that the discovery was going really well. So you just thought, okay, I'll skip this section because like I've already got enough information, and I think if I ask this, it's going to make the prospect uncomfortable. I cannot tell you how many times I've skipped a section of the sales process only to see that when it comes to the objection handling, the objection is always related to the one area that I've missed, right? Just because I thought, okay, I've got enough information here. This is probably going to make the prospect feel a little bit uncomfortable based on what they've said beforehand. So I just skip that sales part. Right? Never do that. Always ask it, right? And that's a big reason for getting objections. You just miss a key part of that sales process. For example, like you never dug into one of the beliefs in terms of timing that they need to buy. the cost of not taking action. So like why now is the best time to take action, right? So like an example of what a question would be like for that on a discovery phase, it would be, yeah, okay, so you've been struggling with lead generation for the past 4 months now. I'm curious, like, what prompted you to reach out to me now? Like, what shifted for you? Why is now important? Right? If you're not asking a question like that, you don't get that same sense of urgency, and undoubtedly you're going to get a objection that relates to that in the sales process. Like, it's pretty likely, right? So a big reason is breakdown in the sales process, specifically in the discovery and the pitch as well. It can happen. Conditioned by buyer's response. So sometimes prospects will almost have this like knee-jerk reaction because like they've just been sold so many times, right? Maybe things haven't worked out, so they almost have like a click word response in their brain that they just don't make decisions on this first call anymore. They've been sold so much, so they just have this, they have a high level of sales resistance because they've just had bad experiences. So for example, this kind of relates back in the form of trust. So let's say they say like, I'm 100% in, I just want to sleep on it, right? So again, you can kind of see that usually that's a bit of uncertainty, right? But yeah, sometimes prospects will just have these like innate beliefs that they always have, right? And you really just need to address the uncertainty there, which I'll go into later. Unclosable. So some prospects are genuinely unclosable. Like let's say they have $500 in their bank account, they have like a terrible credit score. So even if they wanted to purchase your product, they genuinely couldn't do it. So they're actually unclosable, right? Like, so these are the main 4 reasons. And if you understand that, it really helps you to know how to actually drill down into these objections and handle them correctly. So there's mainly 3 main objections, like when it comes to getting on calls and when prospects give you resistance. Like I've genuinely found that these are the 3 main objections that you'll get, right? And the best thing about this is you can eliminate most of them with the discovery phase, right? So number 1 is uncertainty. So it's in any case where the prospect is less than 100% certain that this is the right time, this is the right thing for them, this is the right product, right? And now is the right time, right? So for example, like objections that come up in the form of uncertainty. I want to think about it. I want to do more research. I've only known you for like an hour. I want to sleep on it. It's too risky. There's no guarantee. I need to wait because of this, this, and this. Like these are all reflections of the prospect just not having that buy-in to what it is exactly that you do. It's probably something that they don't fully understand about your pitch. It's probably something that broke the trust down a little bit. So again, I'm going to talk about how we can go back and make sure that we tie down the certainty on this before handling the correct objection. But uncertainty, almost every objection is related to uncertainty. Once you've tied down the objection related to uncertainty and you realize, okay, now they're 100% bought into the process, usually it becomes a case of financial, right? So either it's logistics, like they want to do it, but you have to work out the logistics for them. So you have to explore payment plans with them. You have to give them options to pay in credit, whatever it may be, right? The reason I say like you have to work out the logistics for them is because if you don't do this and you allow them to sort of like tell you what's best for them, they take control of the call and it creates this huge messy framework where again, like you're no longer in the position of authority where they're seeing you as that leader and they're seeing you as the person that's acting in their best interest. You've now just given them all of the authority that you had beforehand, and now they're sort of in control, like choosing the price of your service, choosing how to get on board in the least financially beneficial way for you, right? Next one is conditions. So like genuinely they could have just like almost no money, right? A lot of the time when they give a financial objection, it is a smokescreen for uncertainty, again, which is why we tie it down. But again, it could be conditions. Like they could have a terrible credit score, $800 in the bank. You're trying to sell something for $6,000, and it's just not going to work, right? Again, it's too expensive. Usually uncertainty based. So usually there's something about your service, about how you did the discovery that they're unsure about, and you need to go back, tie it down, and then address the real objection. Support, partner, spouse. Personally, I've never really got this objection just because of who exactly I'm selling to, right? This comes up with local businesses and things like that. But yeah, like sometimes it can be support. And that's the thing, if you center your discovery framework around having a support section where you ask questions that allow you to eliminate this objection, it becomes a lot easier, right? And you don't really have to deal with this as much. But again, like, yeah, it can be, I've made the decision, but I need to let them know. I need their permission to make the decision or to know if it's the right decision to make, right? So usually it's one of these three things. It's always one of these three things, actually. It's always uncertainty, support, or financial, right? So I want to go through some objection handling fundamentals here as well before I go into this last section. Essentially, what it looks like is you always want to handle uncertainty first, right? So you always want to tie down on their certainty and then move on to support, financial, whatever the true objection may be if necessary, right? If you do this, you'll always handle the real objection, right? So you always need to tie down on their like uncertainty first and make sure that they're 100% bought into the process. And there's nothing other than this certain thing that's keeping them from being 100% certain that this is what they want to do. So let's say I say the price of my product, right? I say it's 6K and they say, oh damn, that's expensive. I need to think about it. Okay, so that's like at face value, that's a financial objection, right? But it could be a smokescreen for a myriad of different things. So what I would say in that situation is I'd be like, okay, it makes sense. Just for a second, finances and everything aside, is there anything about what I've talked to you about in terms of the process that you're less than 100% certain on? Right? And then they'd be like, oh, okay, well, actually, this bit about what you said about building the system for acquisition, I don't really understand how this, and this works, etc. And then, okay, now you realize it's not just financial. You need to go back and you need to handle that specific thing that they've just told you. And then you can tie it down again, make sure that there's nothing else. And then you can handle the financial because you know that you're now handling the real objection. So pacing the objection is absolutely key, right? You want to, for the most part, you want to avoid direct rebuttals almost every time. Like unless you have a huge amount of authority on the call, the prospect's basically doing whatever you're saying. Like you always want to avoid these direct rebuttals. For example, like genuinely, I think this is actually something that I don't know if Charlie Morgan says this in his course, but I heard this from somewhere. It's like when someone gives you that I need to speak to my wife, it's like how many businesses has your wife around? Not only is this kind of like confrontational, but it's not really approaching the objection with any sort of logic or understanding or empathy, right? Because we're not handling the real objection. Like I need to speak to my wife could be a smokescreen from so many different things, right? So again, approaching it from an understanding, pacing the objection, tying it down is how we can actually handle the correct one, right? So we want to always clarify what they really mean by that before handling the objection. So it maintains trust, helps the prospect be way more receptive to us. Tonality. So your tonality must be neutral when prospects hit you with objections, because what I used to do is prospects would hit me with objections and I used to almost be in a way like pissed off that they gave me an objection, which is not a good way to do things, because what happens then is like that sort of sense of trust breaks. Like all that rapport that you've built with a prospect over the call kind of breaks because they see you've become a different person almost. Like your tonality's shifted, your energy's changed. You need to be neutral, you need to be grounded, and you need to be centered. Like you literally need to be unfazed and you need to expect them. Because the best way to be unfazed by objections if you just expect them on every call. Like yes, you can get good enough to the point where you can eliminate every objection before you pitch. Right can eliminate every objection in the discovery process and then not get any at all and have every close go so smoothly. But you're probably not at that point yet. You're probably not going to nail every single discovery, right? So you need to expect objections. They're always going to come up, and yeah, like you have to have the mindset that they're going to come up, but you're going to close anyway, so it's not going to matter, right? Referencing what they told you earlier in the call as well is a massive one, because what that's going to do is basically like you need to hold prospects accountable because they're going to tell you all these things of why they want to solve this problem, how much pain it's putting them in. But as soon as you drop the price, now they actually have to do something about it. Now they have to put their money where their mouth is. So referencing what they told you earlier is a huge like point of leverage to make sure that they're actually living up to their higher self and they're doing the things that is going to move the business forward because they've just told you they have the problem. Like if you've done it correctly, they're bought into your process, right? So why wouldn't they take the action, right? This is why taking notes is so important because you can write down all the language that they've used, right? And you can say, okay, like it's weird because you just told me that this is causing all this problem around your business, right? The feast and famine cycle with your leads. It's causing you to have a load of self-doubt, right? You said you wanted to hit this goal. I've shown you this whole process of how we can hit this goal. You're 100% bought into the process. Now we're talking about the price. We've explored ways to make it work. But now you're saying now you're saying you don't want to do it. Like, is what's really going on here? So you can see like how you can use their own language. That was a bad example, but you can use their language to hold them accountable. And because they're like in the discovery process, they're giving you this like whole identity of the person that they want to be. So you can almost play on that identity and be like, okay, so what would the ideal version of yourself do in this situation? Because like it says here, identity and purpose are the highest drivers of behavior. So if you hold them accountable to the person they want to be and the desired person that they've told you about who would easily achieve their goal, right? So like you can keep them accountable to that person, and again, like talk about the people they'll let down if they're not that person, which is primarily going to be themselves, right? So you can really play on like the lower self and the higher self. Who do you want to live up to? What do you want to actually do? Which is huge. Like two phrases you should use on the call. In the discovery phrase, you're telling me, just to like clarify what they're saying is true. And then after you've pitched, you told me, right? So you're leveraging things that they said, you're keeping them accountable. And as humans, we hate to act out of alignment with things that we've said before or actions that we've done. It's called the consistency bias. So if you can play on that bias, you're going to have an even higher chance of closing prospects. This is a simple diagram that really covers how objections actually look from a bird's eye view. So you have the investment drop where you talk about how much money it's actually going to be. Then you're pacing the first objection. So when you say what the price is, like they're always just going to throw some bullshit out there about like, oh, I need to think about it. Oh, it's a lot of money, whatever, right? So you always need to pace that first objection, tie down uncertainty, make sure they're bought into the process, right? Understand what exactly they're unsure about, understand if it's a smokescreen or not. And then you can find out if it's an uncertainty-based objection, you handle the uncertainty, tie it down, okay, cool, then it becomes financial or spouse. Maybe you'll handle these, right? Which is why the arrows are here. Maybe you handle these. And then another uncertainty-based objection comes out of that. And then you can pull it back to the partner, the spouse objections, the financial objections. And you just keep repeating this process of handling the tying it down, right? Handling the objection, tying it down again, handling the objection until you're absolutely certain that there's this one thing that they're unsure about that you need to handle. And then you can just give them like a simple closing loop that just eliminates that. So if it's financial, it could be you could add a guarantee, you could do a payment plan, right? Just as an example, right? Just to eliminate that risk as much as possible. But it only makes sense to do that if you know they're 100% bought into the process and they have no uncertainty around what you're offering. So hopefully you found that video valuable. If you want this Google Doc that I've gone over, add me on LinkedIn, right? I'll put a link to my LinkedIn in the description, and just message me objection handling, right? Connect with me, message me objection handling, and I'll send this over to you. If you want more information about what we do, there's a link in the description. You can book in a call with me, you can find out. We help marketing agencies. We're not a course, we're not a program, we're not any of that bullshit. Yeah, it's just direct access to myself and my business partner. We'll find out where you're at right now, where you want to be, and we'll probably use this objection handling framework on you as well. But yeah, that's everything for this video. Let me know how you found it, and I'll see you in the next one.